Okay, so today we are diving into something big. Nana Kwame Bediako's policies.
Okay.
It's a policy document with a plan for Ghana, and it's ambitious.
Yeah.
They're calling it the 12 Pillars for Economic Freedom. We've got the document and some visuals.
Right.
And let me tell you, it's not just about like tweaking a few laws. This is about like a total transformation,
Right.
like a hard reset on how Ghana approaches its entire economic future.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how this document sets the stage right from the beginning. It's full of really powerful language, talking about a defining moment for Ghana,
Okay.
a time for swift action.
Yeah.
But I think what's really striking is the way it connects this urgency with like a really deep belief in Ghana's potential.
Yeah.
So it highlights these vast untapped resources, 13 million hectares of arable land, $2.5 trillion worth of mineral reserves.
Wow.
And it talks about the indomitable spirit of the Ghanaian people.
Yeah, they're not mincing words, are they?
No.
There's a line in here that really stood out to me.
Okay.
In a country where the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy, we stand resolute with a higher purpose. This isn't just about economics. This is about national identity,
Absolutely.
about reclaiming a sense of agency on the global stage.
It really is. It's framing this as a moment of national rebirth,
Okay.
a chance for Ghana to rise up and become a beacon of prosperity and progress.
Mm-hmm.
But the question is, how do they plan to make this vision a reality?
Right.
And that's where these 12 pillars come in. Each one is like a major initiative designed to reshape a different aspect of Ghana's economy and society.
Okay, so let's break it down a little bit.
Let's do it.
We've got Pillar 1, the 16 Regional Industrial Revolution.
Okay.
Pillar 2, Ghana's first water transportation and sub-regional railway.
Mm-hmm.
Pillar 3 is all about creating an energy city and technology hub.
Right.
Well, Pillar 4 just shouts, reserves, reserves, reserves.
I love the enthusiasm.
I love the enthusiasm, too. We've also got plans for a National Sovereign Wealth Fund, that's Pillar 5.
Okay.
A reformed social security system, that's Pillar 6.
Mm-hmm.
And something called industrialization, which is Pillar 7.
Catchy.
I know, right? And it doesn't stop there. We've also got environmental protection, governance reform, national security, even boosting the creative industries.
A lot to digest.
It is.
But I think the important thing to remember is these pillars aren't meant to be seen in isolation. They're all interconnected.
Okay.
Each one is supporting and reinforcing the others. So to really understand this plan, I think we need to look at how these pillars relate to each other.
Okay.
Let's start with something that's kind of at the heart of any strong economy,
Mm-hmm.
industrialization and job creation.
Okay.
That's where pillars 1 and 7 come in.
Okay, so Pillar 1, the 16 Regional Industrial Revolution.
Yes.
That's about taking those incredible natural resources that you were talking about and turning them into actual products.
Exactly.
Right.
This is about activating what they call dormant regions by building manufacturing and refining plants all across Ghana. Think gold, bauxite, iron ore, cocoa, all those resources processed and turned into high-value products right here in Ghana.
And this is where it gets really interesting because the potential impact of that is huge.
Huge, yeah.
They're talking about creating 800,000 new jobs every single year.
Wow.
That's 8 million new jobs in a decade. Imagine what that could do for Ghana's economy.
Transformative.
Lifting millions out of poverty,
Yeah.
creating a new middle class, maybe even reversing the brain drain as skilled Ghanaians see these opportunities at home.
Absolutely. It's incredibly ambitious.
It is.
There's no doubt about it. And it really raises the question of whether such a rapid transformation is even feasible. But to support this massive industrialization push, they're also planning a complete overhaul of their education system.
Yeah.
And that's where Pillar 7 industrialization comes into play.
Industrial education.
Okay, I like it.
So they're basically trying to make sure that their education system is producing graduates with the skills needed for this new industrial landscape.
Exactly. They're talking about industrial education, culture and curriculum, and even a mental revolution. Although the document doesn't really get into specifics about what those entail just yet.
Okay.
But it's clear that they want to foster critical thinking, problem solving, emotional intelligence, and this kind of Ghana first mentality in their young people. To want to see how these kind of lofty goals translate into actual educational reforms.
It's a pretty radical shift. And it makes you wonder how those changes will be received by, people on the ground. But for now, let's move on to another fascinating aspect of this plan. How they're approaching infrastructure, particularly their waterways.
So speaking of ambitious projects, this brings us to Pillar 2. Ghana's first water transportation and sub-regional railway,
Okay.
which is a bold plan to really harness the power of Ghana's rivers and lakes.
Okay.
And they even draw a comparison to Egypt's Suez Canal, highlighting its economic impact and suggesting that Ghana has kind of neglected its own potential in this area for far too long.
And they're not just talking about like moving goods around. They want to like develop Lake Volta as a major distribution hub for all of West Africa,
That's right.
build a whole network of railways connecting to these waterways, and even introduce leisure travel via ferries and cruise ships. That sounds amazing.
It does. But it also highlights a really important point, and that is that they acknowledge the current state of Ghana's waterways, particularly the pollution caused by illegal mining. They're not shying away from these challenges. In fact, they're saying that this plant isn't just about boosting the economy. It's also about improving water management and ensuring that everyone has access to clean water.
Which is crucial, especially considering that they cite a UNICEF statistic that over 75% of households in Ghana are at risk of drinking contaminated water.
That's a stark reminder of the challenges they're facing.
It is, but it sounds like they're really trying to tackle these issues head on.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another key pillar, one that underpins a lot of these ambitious projects, Pillar 5, the National Sovereign Wealth Fund, or as the document boldly puts it, the new IMF.
So they're talking about creating a national fund to manage Ghana's wealth, reducing reliance on international institutions like the IMF.
Precisely. And they make this really interesting comparison to Norway, a country with a similar population to Accra alone, yet with a dramatically larger sovereign wealth fund. They're essentially asking, if Norway can do it, why not Ghana?
Hmm.
It's a bold challenge to kind of conventional thinking about economic development.
It's a powerful statement for sure. They're basically saying we want to be in the driver's seat of our own economic future. But how exactly do they plan to manage this fund? And what about the potential risks? We've seen other countries with sovereign wealth funds run into problems, with corruption and mismanagement.
Right. Those are crucial questions. And to be honest, the document doesn't lay out all the specifics just yet, but it does emphasize the need for transparency and accountability. And it's clear that they see this fund as a key tool for achieving their long-term vision of a more self-reliant and prosperous Ghana. Now, kind of shifting gears a bit.
Okay.
Let's talk about another really pressing issue.
Okay.
Energy.
Right, because you can't have an industrial revolution without a reliable and affordable source of power. And that brings us to Pillar 3, Energy City and Technology Hub. It sounds like they're trying to tackle a few different challenges at once with this one.
They are. They acknowledge that there is this growing gap between energy supply and demand in Ghana. And they're proposing a multi-pronged approach to address it. So first, they want to diversify their energy sources, incorporating more solar, wind, biomass alongside existing hydropower and thermal plants.
Okay, so spreading the risk, not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly. Reducing dependence on any one source of energy.
Yeah.
But they're also considering something much more controversial, right? Nuclear power.
Okay, yeah, they specifically mention exploring the development of a nuclear power plant. And not just that, they're even talking about sourcing uranium from neighboring countries like Niger and Namibia. I mean, it's a bold move, to say the least.
Yeah.
Considering the potential risks and just the complexities of nuclear energy.
It's a hot-button issue for sure.
Yeah.
And it'll be really interesting to see how they navigate those challenges, especially when it comes to public perception.
But it sounds like they're serious about exploring all the options to meet their energy needs.
Yeah.
And there's another really fascinating aspect to this pillar technology.
Yes. The Technology Hub component of Pillar 3 is all about embracing innovation, particularly in emerging fields like blockchain and artificial intelligence.
Okay.
They want to build data centers for crypto mining, create a software development hub, and really position Ghana as a leader in this so-called Web3 revolution.
Okay, for those of us who are not like tech wizards, can you explain what Web3 actually is?
Sure. Web3 is essentially the next generation of the internet. It's built on blockchain technology.
Okay.
It's about decentralization, security, giving users more control over their data. It's still in its early stages, but it has the potential to revolutionize everything from finance to social media.
Wow. So it sounds like they're really trying to position Ghana at the forefront of this technological wave. And speaking of being ahead of the game, let's talk about Pillar 4, reserves. Reserves. It sounds like they're taking a page out of the squirrel's playbook, just preparing for the future.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And it's apt because this pillar is all about securing Ghana's future by building up reserves across various sectors. So gold, agriculture, oil and gas, minerals, even tax reserves.
Tax reserves, what does that even mean?
It's not explicitly defined in the document,
Okay.
but it seems to suggest a focus on building a more robust and efficient tax collection system,
Okay.
essentially ensuring that the government has the financial resources it needs to fund all these ambitious projects.
That makes sense. But let's talk about the more tangible reserves. They're setting some pretty bold targets. 200 tons of gold reserves, this massive seedling bank for food security, billions of dollars worth of oil reserves, and 7 trillion cubic feet of gas within a decade. Those are some big numbers.
They are. And I think this focus on reserves speaks to a larger theme of self-reliance that runs throughout this entire plan. They're essentially saying, we want to be in control of our own destiny,
Yeah,
with the resources to kind of weather any storm.
that's a powerful message. But it also kind of raises questions about how these resources will be managed. Will they be used wisely, transparently, or will they become a source of corruption and cronyism?
Those are valid concerns, and only time will tell how this plays out. But for now, let's maybe move on to another crucial aspect of this plan: securing the future through Social Security reform, environmental protection, and national security measures.
All right, let's dive into it. So, Pillar 6 is all about shaking things up with their social security system, right? The SSNIT revolution, as they call it.
Exactly. So SSNIT stands for the Social Security and National Insurance Trust.
Okay.
And right now, contributors have to wait 40 years before they can access their benefits. This plan proposes slashing that waiting period to just 5 years, giving people access to their funds much sooner.
Wow. That's a huge change. What's the thinking behind that?
Well, they argue that it will empower individuals, giving them more control over their own finances. It's also meant to kind of stimulate investment in key sectors like housing, healthcare, education, as contributors will be able to use their SSNIT funds for those purposes.
It's a bold move for sure. But I can also see some potential downsides. What happens if people make, poor financial decisions and deplete their savings too quickly?
That's definitely a risk, and the document doesn't really address that directly.
Okay.
But it's clear that they're aiming for a significant shift in how Social Security operates in Ghana, putting more power in the hands of individuals. Now let's shift gears to another really critical issue: the environment.
Right. Because it's all well and good to talk about industrialization and economic growth, but not at the cost of, the planet. And that brings us to Pillar 8, environmental and human rights protection. It sounds like they're acknowledging some difficult realities here.
They are. The document doesn't shy away from the very real environmental challenges facing Ghana. So we're talking pollution of water bodies, land degradation, the negative impacts of illegal mining, or galamsey as it's known locally, and the threats faced by those who speak out against this kind of environmental destruction.
They even mention the tragic case of Ahmed Suwali, the investigative journalist who was murdered after exposing corruption in Ghana's Football Association. It's a stark reminder of the risks faced by those who challenge the status quo.
It is, and the document acknowledges that these issues, environmental degradation and human rights abuses, are often intertwined.
Mhm.
They argue that protecting the environment and upholding human rights are essential for long-term stability and prosperity.
So what's their plan to address these very serious challenges?
Well, they're proposing a multifaceted approach. It includes establishing a new environmental protection agency with greater authority to actually enforce regulations and hold polluters accountable. They also want to invest heavily in industrial-scale water purification, research into sustainable practices, and innovative approaches to resource management.
So it sounds like they're trying to take a more proactive and holistic approach to environmental protection.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to, write these plans down.
Right.
It's another thing entirely to implement them effectively.
Absolutely. And that will require strong political will, adequate funding, and a genuine commitment to transparency and accountability.
For sure. Now let's move on to another crucial aspect of this plan: national security. So Pillar 11, national security and data sovereignty. It sounds like they're thinking about security in both the physical and digital realm.
Precisely. And they highlight the increasing importance of data security. They actually cite a recent data breach at Optus where millions of personal records were compromised.
It seems like every other week we're hearing about another company or government agency getting hacked. It's scary.
Exactly. And that's why they're proposing kind of this two-pronged approach to national security: strengthening physical security measures, but also bolstering cybersecurity.
So what does that look like in practice? What specific measures are they proposing?
Well, on the physical security front, they're talking about increasing the national defense budget, providing more resources and training to security forces, and using advanced technologies like surveillance systems to combat threats like illegal mining, terrorism, drug trafficking.
Okay, so that all sounds pretty standard for a, national security plan. But what about the cybersecurity side of things?
That's where it gets kind of interesting.
Yeah.
They're proposing a pretty radical solution, a national blockchain platform to secure vital records and government processes.
Great, blockchain, like the technology behind
The
cryptocurrencies.
one and only.
What does that have to do with national security?
Okay, so blockchain is inherently secure and transparent.
Right.
It's incredibly difficult to hack or tamper with data stored on a blockchain.
Yeah.
So their idea is to create this secure, decentralized system for storing everything from birth certificates and land titles to national reserves data and government contracts.
So instead of having all this sensitive information stored on, vulnerable government servers, they want to put it on a blockchain where it's much harder to access illegally.
Exactly. They argue that this will not only make Ghana's data more secure, but also increase transparency and reduce opportunities for corruption.
It's a bold idea for sure, but it also raises some questions. What about privacy? How do we ensure that this blockchain system doesn't become a tool for mass surveillance?
Right. Those are valid concerns, and the document doesn't really address those in detail. It does mention the need to balance security with individual liberties,
Sure.
but it remains to be seen how they plan to strike that balance in practice. But for now, let's maybe shift our focus from the digital realm back to the physical world,
Okay.
because the next pillar is all about something that's deeply ingrained in Ghanaian culture:
Okay.
governance and leadership.
Okay. Pillar 9, the apostolic governance. That's an interesting name. It sounds almost religious.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And in a way, it kind of reflects that deep significance that leadership holds in Ghanaian society.
Okay.
But this pillar isn't about religion per se. It's about the structure of government itself.
Okay, so how does it work? What makes it apostolic?
Well, instead of having a traditional cabinet with ministers overseeing these kind of broad portfolios like finance or health, this apostolic governance model aligns each ministry with one of the 12 pillars.
Oh, wow.
So you have a ministry of the 16 Regional Industrial Revolution, a ministry of Ghana's first water transportation and sub-regional railway, and so on.
So each ministry is like laser focused on implementing one specific aspect of this grand vision.
Exactly. It's about streamlining decision-making, ensuring accountability, and creating this direct line of sight between each pillar and the ministry responsible for making it happen.
It's a fascinating approach, but does it actually work in practice? I mean, governing a country is complex. Issues often overlap. Won't this kind of siloed approach make it harder to address those interconnected challenges?
That's a valid concern. And it'll be interesting to see how this model plays out in the real world. Will it lead to greater efficiency and accountability? Or will it create more bureaucracy and make it harder for different ministries to work together effectively? We'll have to wait and see.
Those are important questions, but for now, let's move on to another pillar that directly impacts people's lives:
Okay.
healthcare.
Right, because a healthy population is absolutely essential for a thriving economy. And that's where Pillar 10 comes in, the healthcare revolution.
Okay, what's revolutionary about their approach to healthcare? Are they planning to introduce universal healthcare coverage or invest heavily in new hospitals and medical research?
Well, those are certainly important aspects of any healthcare system. This pillar takes a slightly different approach. It focuses on 3 key areas: preventative care, traditional medicine, and medical tourism.
Okay, let's break that down a little. What do they mean by preventative care?
Essentially, it's about shifting the focus from treating illnesses to preventing them in the first place.
Okay.
So they want to invest in public health campaigns that promote healthy lifestyles, early detection of diseases, better access to primary care.
That makes a lot of sense. Prevention is better than cure, as they say.
Exactly.
But what about traditional medicine? How does that fit into the picture?
So Ghana has this rich tradition of herbal medicine and other forms of traditional healing.
Right.
And this pillar recognizes the value of those practices and proposes integrating them more fully into the healthcare system.
So they're talking about things like using traditional remedies alongside modern medicine.
Exactly. They want to establish a system for regulating and standardizing traditional medicine, ensuring its safety and efficacy. They also want to invest in research to really explore the potential benefits of traditional remedies and potentially develop new drugs and treatments.
That's really cool. It's about blending the best of both worlds, right?
Yeah.
Modern medical science and traditional healing practices. What about medical tourism? What are their plans for that?
So Ghana has the potential to become a hub for medical tourism, attracting patients from other African countries and beyond. They have skilled medical professionals, relatively affordable healthcare costs, and the potential to develop really cutting-edge medical facilities.
So they're hoping to attract people who might otherwise travel to Europe or Asia for specialized medical treatment.
Exactly. And this influx of medical tourists would not only generate revenue for the healthcare system, but also create jobs and stimulate the economy as a whole. It's about leveraging Ghana's existing strengths and really building a reputation for high-quality, affordable healthcare.
That's great. It's a bold vision for the future of healthcare in Ghana. Now let's turn our attention to the final two pillars, sports and the creative industries. And these might seem like less pressing issues compared to things like, industrialization or national security, but they're actually incredibly important for a country's soft power and cultural influence.
Absolutely, and that's something that this plan clearly recognizes. Pillar 12, sports and the creative industry, is all about nurturing talent, celebrating Ghana's rich cultural heritage, and really projecting that culture onto the global stage.
So what specific initiatives are they proposing in this area?
Well, on the sports front, they're talking about investing in state-of-the-art sports academies across the country, providing young athletes with access to world-class training facilities, coaches, equipment.
That makes sense. I mean, Ghana has a proud sporting tradition, especially in football, but they've often struggled to translate that talent into success on the international stage. So maybe these academies could help to change that.
Exactly. And it's not just about elite athletes. They also want to promote sports at the grassroots level, encouraging physical activity and healthy lifestyles among young people.
So it's this holistic approach to developing sporting talent kind of from the ground up. What about the creative industries? What are their plans for supporting artists, musicians, filmmakers, other creative professionals?
So they're proposing this multi-pronged approach that includes building a world-class film studio in Ghana, establishing a national art gallery to showcase contemporary Ghanaian art, and providing more support for the publishing industry.
A Hollywood standard film studio in Ghana. That's ambitious.
It is. They want to attract international productions to Ghana, creating jobs, boosting the local economy. They also want to nurture homegrown talent, giving Ghanaian filmmakers the resources and support they need to tell their stories to the world.
That's fantastic. What about the art gallery and the publishing industry? What are they doing in those areas?
Well, the National Art Gallery will serve as a platform for showcasing the incredible diversity and creativity of Ghanaian art to both local and international audiences. They also want to establish artist residency programs, providing emerging artists with the space, resources, and mentorship they need to really develop their craft.
It's about nurturing the next generation of artists and giving them that support they need to thrive. What about the publishing industry?
So they recognize that the publishing industry in Ghana faces, significant challenges. Piracy, a lack of access to funding, limited distribution networks.
Yeah, those are big hurdles to overcome. How do they plan to address those?
Well, they're proposing a range of measures, including strengthening intellectual property laws, providing financial assistance to publishers, and exploring new models for digital publishing and distribution.
So it's about creating a more supportive ecosystem for writers, publishers, booksellers to thrive.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing the important role that literature plays in shaping national identity, fostering critical thinking, and promoting literacy.
It's clear that they're trying to cover all the bases with this plan. They're thinking about the big picture, industrialization, infrastructure, national security, but they're also paying attention to the details, like social security reform, environmental protection, supporting the creative industries.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this plan so fascinating. It's not just this dry economic blueprint. It's a vision for a complete societal transformation, a roadmap for Ghana to kind of achieve its full potential on the global stage. It really is a sweeping vision, isn't it? But like we've seen, it's not just about these grandiose projects and impressive numbers.
No, it's about something much deeper, right?
Yeah.
This idea of self-reliance, of like taking control of their own destiny, building a Ghana that's a leader not just in Africa, but on the global stage.
Exactly. And that's what makes this plan so compelling, but it's also what makes it so challenging.
Because it requires this like massive shift in mindset,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
A belief in their own capabilities, a willingness to challenge the status quo, and a commitment to working together to achieve this common goal. Remember that line from the document? We either move forward united or stand still separated.
Oh, yeah.
That's a powerful message.
It is. It really speaks to the heart of what they're trying to achieve here. This isn't just an economic plan, it's a call to action for all Ghanaians to embrace a new way of thinking, a new way of being.
But let's be real. I mean, this plan is not without its potential pitfalls. We've talked about the need for transparency, for accountability,
Mm.
for ensuring that the benefits of this economic transformation reach all segments of society. And what about the potential environmental impact of rapid industrialization? I mean, they address it, but can they really balance economic growth with environmental sustainability?
Those are critical questions. And it's important to remember that this document is just a starting point.
Right?
The real test will be in the implementation.
Yeah.
How will they address these challenges in practice? Will they be able to maintain this focus on unity and collective action when faced with like inevitable disagreements, competing interests?
It's a massive undertaking. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And it's going to require this sustained effort over many years, if not decades, to truly transform Ghana in the way that they envision. But I think what's most intriguing about this plan, regardless of whether they fully succeed or even fail, is just the ambition behind it.
Yeah.
It's this bold statement of intent,
Hmm.
this declaration that Ghana is no longer content to be a passive player on the global stage.
Absolutely. And it challenges us, I think, to think differently about what's possible in Africa.
Yeah.
If Ghana can pull this off, I mean, even if they achieve a fraction of what they've set out to do in this plan,
Yeah.
it could have this ripple effect across the continent,
Mm.
inspiring other nations to chart their own course toward a more prosperous and equitable future.
It's a powerful vision, and it definitely leaves us with a lot to ponder. What do you think, listeners? Is Ghana on the cusp of this new era of prosperity and self-determination? Or are these ambitions simply too grand, too idealistic to be realized? We'd love to hear your thoughts. This deep dive has certainly given us a lot to think about. And that's what we're all about here, exploring big ideas, grappling with complex issues, and hopefully leaving you with more questions than answers.
Because in a world that's just saturated with information, it's not really about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions, challenging assumptions, and being open to new possibilities.
Well said. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the future of Ghana and this audacious vision laid out in Nana Kwame Bediako's policies. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.